Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Vets MXDN, another live interview. Great interviewee tonight, works rider for Honda, AMA 500 national champion, second American to win the USGP. He's like the rock and roll kid, I was calling. Whenever I've seen him walking around, he always looked cool. So he's a bit of a rock and roll dude, as I would say. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy it. Put some questions up. I'm sure Chuck would be happy to ask some questions. You just type what you want up and I can put them up on the screen. So to rev you up, we always start the show now with this countdown. So hope Chuck enjoys what I've put together for him. Just got to find it on my little thing on the right here. Cool. Let's have a good show and hopefully you enjoy it. Cheers, guys.
Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go.
Hi, Chuck.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, good to see you guys.
Yeah, and you.
Boy, that brought back some memories. That's awesome.
Where was that?
That was in Sydney, Australia. And it was, it's good to be reminded of some of these events because there was two guys that were hanging out with me at that race, Marty Moats and Marty Smith. And they're no longer with us, so it's kind of a appropriate time to bring those guys up because we had a fantastic time down there. It was a lot of fun, and I had that battle with Jeff Leask, and that's when
Jeff Leask on the Yamaha #2.
Yeah. He was just emerging. I mean, he was probably 16 at the time, and I was able to give him a couple little lessons, and he learned well. He learned well because he went on and kicked ass and did awesome. And actually, just a couple of years ago, he was running the Husqvarna division in Australia. Invited me to come down and MC the event. We just had a blast. It was a good time. Yeah, they held it for the New Zealanders and the Aussies at the same time. And even though they all speak English, there's a little bit of a difference between the two different cultures. But everybody got along well, drank a lot of booze, and it was a good time.
Hey Chuck, when Adam told me that we were going to be speaking to you tonight, I said, "Oh, this will be brilliant because we won't have to say anything."
Yeah.
I've got to say, for the people that, if they've not seen that video before, Chuck was absolutely at the start of the race. Chuck was nowhere, and literally.
Where did you find that, Adam?
Oh, I'm always looking for stuff, but anyway, it's on YouTube, and Chuck was nowhere in that fight. It was the final of the. I think it was at the. It was at Olympic Stadium. It was at.
It was Olympic Park, I think.
Yeah.
In Sydney.
And like I say, Chuck was nowhere in the race and just came from the back all the way through. It was just an amazing ride.
So that looked like, was that 81, Chuck?
Could be. Yeah, probably. 82. Okay.
Okay. So everybody knew you were in 82. If they didn't know beforehand, they certainly did after September 81.
It's stuff that happened in the U.S. The print news got out, so the enthusiasts around the world kind of knew what was up. And I always say that motocross gave this quiet kid from Oregon a chance to travel all over the place. I was just racing a Bultaco in the Northwest, and motocross created this opportunity to travel to Australia, and then of course later to Europe, and everybody should have an opportunity to travel, and it was a good time. And a little note sidebar on that, there was a girl there that offered. It was kind of interesting. I don't know what it was, but she offered to be the trophy girl. And after I won that thing, and Marty Motes was really pissed because he was like third or fourth, did really well, because then he would have had a shot at the trophy girl. But I'm not sure if she would have volunteered if he was a case, if I can say something like that. But at any rate, we went out that night, and I got introduced to, what do they got, 5X mates, the beer, a 4X, and just had a great time. It was a lot of fun. I'll leave it at that, and, for the kids and families. But
so, Chuck, you were like strawberry picker to motocross racer.
Well, we'd get in strawberry fights, and that's when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and my parents just keep us out of trouble, kicked us out into the fields. It was kind of the thing to do. Everybody's up there, pick some beans too, and then I had these strawberry stained dollar bills, and back then my dad take us to the auto parts store, and those auto parts store had at kids' heights all these toys, bow and arrows, go-karts, and a mini bike. And I just saw this mini bike, and it's really bizarre because it was a little bit of destiny. I didn't know what motocross was. I didn't know what off-road riding was. We weren't exposed to that. And this mini bike just seemed like the thing to do. It had a Briggs & Stratton engine, which is a little pull cord, and it was like 100 bones. That's what I made all summer. And my dad said, "Are you sure you want that?" He said, "How are you gonna?" And I go, "Yeah." So the cool thing about it, he never stepped in the way. A lot of parents were concerned that their kids would, get hurt. So stay away from motorcycles. It's a dirty sport. And he said, "Yeah, no worries." And a lot of the kids followed suit, and they got mini bikes and dirt bikes, and we could ride everywhere back then. I remember getting home from school and jumping across into our neighbor's field. And I think about it, God, they never said a word, just ripping up and down the field when the grass was cut, slopping through the mud and
simpler times, Chuck.
Yeah, a bit so. Yeah, it was good. And that's how we learned how to ride. Then we went one thing to another and just kept getting other bikes, which was, it was in our blood at that point. And then pretty soon, everybody in the family had dirt bikes, including my dad. So, they definitely caught the bug, and it's been with us ever since. But yeah, now Ron, my brother, he's a factory Honda rider, lost him last year, Good guy. He was riding right to the end. All he wanted to do was just go riding. He made it to 60 years old. So give a shout out to RB.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to bring. I didn't realize, Chuck, that you know, to have two factory Honda riders in the family is a, I don't know
Unique.
many other people. Yeah, very unique.
Yeah, we rode together and did things, and he made his mark riding Husqvarna like I did, and it was him and David Bailey were first and second in the series, and he was the next guy for Honda to pick up, so they snapped him up. And then we're from the Northwest, so we always go skiing, and wouldn't you know it, he went out skiing and broke his leg right at the beginning of the season. So his one shot at it never really got a good go of it. And then right at that time, you had O'Mara, Hansen, some heavies coming on. And, he ended up just having that 1 year with Honda, but he won a 125 Mid-Ohio GP. He won a moto there, DNF the other motor because it sucked in too much water. But, being from the Northwest, we're like in the UK, we learn how to ride in the mud.
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting back to your early days, you obviously you picked it up pretty quick because you kept blowing everything up, thrashing it to bits. So you ended up buying one of these.
Oh yeah. Oh boy, you guys did do some research. Yeah, you can take that down now. Yeah. Well, the dealer said, I had a 100 Centurion, and the thing just screamed. And I never made it on a dirt track. We just hill climbed the thing, and kept breaking the bikes. They said, "Yeah, you won't break the 250." And it was the Kawasaki dealer that said, "Hey, there's this track out by Mount Hood called Dover, and it's where Rick Burgett grew up riding." And it was my first exposure to motocross on that bike, and it was. God, we're just so hooked. And I said, how come they're going so slow in the first turn? And I just went wide open on the outside and crashed. That was my very first moto. I said, I want some more of this. But, and you might ask about that number 14. I went up to the sign-up window. It's my first sign-up. Had no idea what was going on. The lady looks down at me. She said, well, what's your number, kid? I said, well, I don't really have a number. Well, how old are you? Well, today's my 14th birthday. Oh, good. You're number 14. And so I went back and put that electrical tape on there and got it all just right. So I really didn't spend much time on the smaller bikes. I was always on the larger bikes.
Yeah, it was a 250 that was. So I don't know.
That was a 250, yeah.
How old were you? 14?
14, right on the nose, yeah. You just got started. And about the amount of time we spent on the bike in the Northwest, there's nothing happening in the winter because it's just raining, miserable, cold. And
sounds like England.
Yeah, it's the same thing, except I think you guys keep riding all winter. But you think half the guys over there go down to Spain. But here's what happened in the summer. You had spring fever so bad. Wild horses. I usually dropped out of school, but I ended up going back and graduating with everybody else. But there were sometimes I raced 5 days in a week, like Wednesday night motocross in Albany, that's Oregon. Thursday night, the oldest running motocross in night motocross is PIR, which was in Portland. They're still running it, with the exception of COVID. And then the Friday night, it'd be a Woodburn drag strip under the lights. And Saturday, it'd be either Goose Hollow or Fox Hollow. And then Sunday, it'd be Washougal. And I'd run those Bultacos ragged and, long hair down in the middle of my back, a bag of weed and just a wad of dough, that's just a wad of dough. And, at 16 years old, it's what's going on? Everybody else is going to school and stuff. And I said, you're going to never make it, make it money as motocross. Well, that may be true, but for right now, we're having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when you started out, Chuck, your style was very ragged. Is that right? You were like a real aggressive, crazy rider, and everybody sort of steered a bit clear of it, and you sort of got smoother as you got not older, but when you got into your career, as it were.
Well, that's pretty good. You got a hold of that information. I don't know where you got that, but I was so hungry, didn't know any better. I'm just so lucky I survived. I just never shut off, and maybe it was a desire to prove yourself, as a young kid. Yeah, at that very track, Dover Park, some of the older guys were saying, older, I'm saying 25 to 30. They got to get up and go to work anymore, and I came really close to getting banned, because I was too dangerous. I'd come all the way across the track and said, "Dude, you got to chill out." And it kind of took place. There was a guy, Bob Leach, that started the Washougal Motocross track, and he had a shop down in Salem, and I had this Galaxy 500. It's black, and I used to sleep in it. I go down to the shop and work on the bike and just crash in the back of the van for a couple of days and go riding. And when I got on Bultacos, just the way those bikes worked, in order to get the most of it, it just automatically, just happened. I started to smooth out. Maybe it was the influence of Palmer and stuff, backing it in. And I ride him today, and I see you can't even steer the things. So that's how you learn the old Villapoto style of kicking the rear end out. So, I started to pick that up, and, we're racing so much, you had to survive. But those wild days, I was still an amateur. But I was thinking back, it was kind of a trip. Maybe I was an amateur for a year and a half, and they called the money class the expert class, and you pay your $10 entry fee, and there was 200% payback. So the enticement of making money seemed really cool. So it was a real rapid progression to the expert class, and there was loaded gates. There were 40 riders. It was so fun back then. There's just, the tracks were just loaded with, everybody's super enthusiastic. They're moving their shocks up, trying to do everything they could to get these bikes to work right. And it was a good time. All the personalities of the bikes were really unique. And then the Canadians, they'd get the works factory Yamahas. So they'd come down to Oregon, and they were all cool, the white tanks, and there were some pretty good riders there.
Who was the opposition back then, Chuck?
Well, I state that the only reason I was able to improve my riding is every single weekend I had to race against Rick Burgett. And, I'm a skinny Chinese kid, and they called him the lumberjack. So I remember I took his front wheel out, and he was so pissed at me one time, he almost broke my neck in half. He was a big, burly guy, and his style was a power riding style. When he won the championship, he was so strong, where I wasn't as strong, so I had to kind of place the bike, so my style was different. So it was really two contrasting styles. And there were a lot of riders, real good riders from the Northwest. There was one guy from Canada, Mackenzie, I think his name. He used to come down with his factory bike.
I'm just gonna do something. Don't say anything. Hang on. That's it.
That's better.
Oh, the early plug, is it coming back on?
Yeah, you're in the middle now, Chuck, because when you bring people into the stream is where they end up. So I brought Dave came in last, so Dave was in the middle, but obviously you're the main man, so I wanted to get you in the middle.
No worries.
Mr. Rock and Roll Motocross himself.
So, Chuck, where are we speaking to you today? Because whenever I see you, you could be anywhere in the world on 5 different days.
Well, that's the exciting thing about where I'm at right now. I don't really like to be tethered, so I don't really make plans. So I just wing it. Something comes up. Hey, you want to go riding? Yeah. Let me check my calendar, which I don't have. So I always work my way south when the weather starts getting adverse up north. Somebody was joking that I didn't have a coat. Well, a coat would really allow me to stay where I don't want to stay longer than I should. Because if I need a coat, it means I need to get in my Sprinter, the monkey van, and head south. So now I'm in Vegas, and it's high 60s, a little cool in the evening, and later on this afternoon, I'm going to spin out the mountain bike and run some technical stuff. It's not training. It's just I love to be on the mountain bike and dirt bikes. And this time of year, a lot of people float through. I just rode with the guy out of Washington, does Tour Tech and makes all those cool navigation devices. Guy from Bike Bandit. There's always people that float down here in mid-December. A trials aficionado, Dennis Sweeten's going to pop down, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of the place to be. But a lot of it's like the Northwest Technical riding in the woods. We're down here. It's a little bit more up tempo in the desert. So it's good time. So I'm in Las Vegas at what we call the compound, and there's a couple crews that roll through here, and there's Intelligent Design in the computer business. That's where we just came from. That's a new riding area just out of Utah, close to Moab, out of Hanksville. And there's these little ribs that are 6 inches wide, and you can't put your feet down, and you just got to balance up these edges. Otherwise, you're off the cliff. So it's somehow I've gotten into this extreme riding. They say, well, when do you start extreme riding? Well, at 63. That's kind of odd.
On that note, Chuck, I was going to get onto this later, but as you're talking about it,
we're in a secret location.
Someplace in Iowa.
Yep. That's actually a painting in the back of the strip. Ignore that. Dude, he's making that look like child's play.
Doesn't he though? It makes it look easy.
Right there, he's gonna have trouble yet. No way, man. That's nuts.
Oh God. I can't tell you where that's at. But yeah,
that looks like a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's a gas. It was so steep. It's like gravel coming down. But Matt, I'm surprised you found that. I didn't even know he had it online anywhere.
I hope Husky are helping you out, Chuck.
Well, I just can't get motocross out of my blood, and so I always have the 250 two-stroke and kickstarting it. But this year, it's crazy. On the meter since January, I put on 300 hours, and it may be the most I've ever ridden in a year. Hard to believe, because I haven't really kept track of it that much. Because motocross, you put in an hour or two training, and that you're good. But when you do the off-road stuff, we'll go out for 6-7 hour beatdowns and exploring, and it's just incredible. So, but I'm going to go to the button because my legs tired. I think I kicked it 1,359 times. But I did some things to make it more off-road worthy. And the motocross bike's a little lighter, but it's time for a button again. I go back and forth, and I always like to have a motocross bike because I jump on tracks. This year was kind of cool. I was up in Oregon. I got invited to some private tracks, and what a way to quarantine on a private motocross track. It's awesome.
What I was going to say, Chuck, that going up that hill, and there's a 300-foot cliff off to the left. Usually it's like if you put something in the middle of a field, something can hit it. You're going up. It looked quite a long way away, that 300-foot cliff, but
it's steep. It's steep over to it, and believe me, there's other stuff we've ridden. It's right there.
Yeah,
we just rode in Idaho a little tiny ribbon that you have to do this rock step up, and you just don't look over the edge. The old premise is look where you want to go, and keep calm and don't fuck up.
Otherwise,
there's a mountain bike ride we do in Moab, and you finish coming down the portal, and it's famous. A quarter of the way down, there's a sign that says, "Stop, get off your bike, you can die here." And I'm no exaggeration. There's a slanted rock, and it's straight cliff, 300 feet down, and that gets your attention.
Yeah.
So
well, I want to rewind.
get back to the motocross.
The first time, really, I ever heard your name. I knew you were national champion. Was that 1980?
1980, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the nations, 81. Yourself, Johnny O. You have to refresh my memory.
Danny Laporte,
and
Johnny Hansen.
Johnny Hansen. Did you, when that team was announced, did you have any inkling at all what was going to go down in Lommel?
Well, of course, I knew we were going to win. I'd always looked up to the European riders. That's where the stars were, in my opinion, the Roger DeCoster and all these guys. And it was always a dream of mine to take part in that. And it's kind of interesting. Injuries are also another thing. At Washougal, Brock Glover and I had this major battle for the championship. And we battled the whole moto. I hit the starting gate, went through everybody, because I knew Washougal, everybody dogpiled to the inside, and I just go outside. And we ended up the last lap going back and forth literally every other turn. And when I had fallen earlier, that broke the number plate bracket, made the throttle cable reach over the CDI box. So the last jump, the throttle stuck, passed Brock into the turn. I jumped off the bike and shredded up my ankle. And for years at Washougal, they've changed the track since then, but that was called the Chuck Sun jump and the catcher's mitt. And so when I got the call from Dave Arnold, I was on the couch with my ankle taped up. And keep in mind, this is what Washougal's end of July, and I'm injured, and we're getting ready to go to Donations in September. So I didn't have much time to heal up, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm good." So it was kind of cool that they had the confidence to put me on the team, even though I was injured at the time.
Yeah, and that was an all Honda affair, wasn't it? Everybody was on Hondas.
Yeah, and the reason for that is we didn't go the year before, maybe 2 years before, because I was on the team for Husky in '79. I mean, that's another story. My dream was to go to Europe, so I rode the last 3 250 GPs: Finland, Sweden, and Russia, and just had a great time. And that was with Husky. And when we got back from the last GP, I hole shotted and led for a while, had this battle with Harry Everetts and Torliff, and then had a major battle for the final podium. I ended up 4th, but it was pretty good for a rookie, first time in Europe. And I had a battle with Vladimir Kavanov. It was so badass. I'd never heard a roar from a crowd so big and frightening. It was like, what was that? When he eventually passed me. And he came over to my pits afterwards with these 2 tuna fish cans filled with vodka to give me a cheers for a good battle. And so anyway, I digress. It was such an awesome experience. We get back to Sweden, and in those days it was a telex. And the guys at the factory said, "Hey, we have a telex." I think it was Staten or Lackey got hurt, so they needed another guy. I was there. It was the next weekend. So by default, I was put onto the team in '79, and we raced Galdorf. And I think it was Rick Burgett was on it, Hannah, and Tommy Croft. And on the 500s, I was second in the second moto behind Mikkola.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, it was like, whoa. And that got me all kinds of deals. So that's kind of followed me around from highs and lows. I can get into a whole other thing about injuries, but I had 3 major injuries, almost quit the year before I was a champion, but we'll get into that later. What was the question?
It was like 81, you know,
The
the
build
No,
up to
81. Okay. So
The build-up.
we're at 79. Hannah was second the first moto. Everybody wanted to see this big battle against Hannah and Mikkola, and he produced. It was awesome. He got 5th the second moto. With our scores, if one of the other guys was in the top 10 in a moto, we would have won. Burgett was super strong that year. He won the championship. He was arguably the strongest guy on the team. Got tangled up in a pileup in the first moto and broke his collarbone. He was out. And Croft had super bad luck with flat tires. So I was coming off of that, and I was thinking, God, we can win this thing. And so to have that other opportunity to come back was a dream for me. And that's why I said, yeah, I'm in at all costs. And we had Jeff Spencer, and he taped up my ankle like a cast. So it was pretty cool.
Who was your mechanic that year, Chuck?
Eric Crippa.
Okay.
Eric Crippa. And he was Howerton's mechanic before that, riding for Husky. Howerton was my glass ceiling.
I was listening. Sorry.
They had one guy, and he was the national 500 champion. And then when Suzuki hired him away, I was the guy to move into that position. And Eric stayed with Husky, and I credit him to prep. And back then, the mechanics was a little bit of art form. I can just picture Eric with metal flecks in his hair, you know, because he's got arthritis in his hands now for porting so many cylinders. So I always had super good running Huskies that were tuned awesome.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but I was listening to an interview from, I think it's Brian Lunis, one of the mechanics that was with you, and those Works Hondas that year, they were good bikes, but you had problems, I think, practicing in the sand, where they would have to change a cylinder after every race.
Well, we learned a lot with the sand getting through the filters and the filter socks. But more importantly than that is they wouldn't finish 40 minutes on the 250s. So, you know, DeCoster was sitting there go, oh, crap. You know, I mean, it was a whole new bike that year. And we had to take the fuel tanks off the 500s and put them on the 250s to make them finish the moto. But they were pretty reliable. They were good. And I think we used the air-cooled bikes, too, if I can remember.
You recall. Did, yeah. Do you remember much about that day?
Yeah. Lomo in the sand.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what was really cool about it is, you know, there was chat about whether or not we should even be allowed to enter with such a low B team, not the A team, you know, scoffs from the FIM and whatever. And, you know, we were all just kids, pretty good shape from the year, pretty pumped up, hanging out with each other and with really good bikes, a consistent program. And they had these qualifiers. And after the qualifiers, I think we won almost everything. I think I won my heat. I could hold on at least 20 minutes with my ankle all jacked up. So after the qualifiers, everything shifted. And, it's unusual for tents here in the US. But in Europe, you have all these tents. And every little crack and nook in that tent, there was an eyeball staring. They go, who are these guys?
Yeah,
What's going on?
What a magical time.
It was so exciting to be a part of that. And we all scored points that contributed towards the win, which was another cool thing. I didn't have my best race, but I think I was 7th or 6th, 7th, 8th in one of the motos. Laporte and O'Mara really shined. And Donnie logged a score as well. So Laporte was kind of known as a sandmaster. He was really good in floor, real strong, and it was amazing.
Yeah, year one of I can't remember how many years was it that Team USA went without being beaten, but you were on the 13, the very first team
on the first team.
13.
Yeah. It was a good run. It was pretty awesome every year, and I'd like to see it return again. A lot of questions come up. How come the Europeans are so strong outdoors? Well, that's what they do. They start training in international events, outdoor events, and then the GP starts. So if you look at the amount of time they spent training for outdoors compared to the U.S. guys, it's no wonder our guys are focusing on Supercross. And it's kind of a dichotomy because Eric Gabors used to say the reason we did so well then was because of Supercross. Now it's backwards. We did well because we became, I think, especially aggressive on the indoors. You had to make some extra moves, and we had this 25-minute sprint, whereas the outdoors, you pace yourself and relax, and we weren't very relaxed even in the 40-minute motos. But nowadays, it's so specialized that the outdoors are tough, rough riding style, and they've gained the edge again. So it's a good challenge for the U.S. to get back in the hunt.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's not that this is most probably the wrong way to say it, but do you think there's a bit of skill gone out of riding, that all the tracks are pretty much man-made, they're all soft, well, not all soft, but pretty much the same, whereas in your day you'd be, like you say, from the northwest, it's like grass.
Oh, no doubt about it. We were way better riders back then. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Every challenge in the types of track that they have produces skills specific for the design. We didn't have scrub so much, although I can remember doing a little things like that. So they're doing pretty amazing aerials and kickers off of jumps, and the different types of power and suspension. They're very high quality riders these days. I think that keeping riders on 2 strokes longer that can help them develop their skills before they get on the 4-stroke would be a safer aspect of riding. I still ride a 2-stroke because it's fun. I get on a 4-stroke and it makes me feel like an old man, big old dum-dum, gung, gung, gung bike. So I like little lively 2-stroke, snappy, makes me feel young again. It's all about having fun. We're not going to win any championships anymore. And it's the 2 strokes are a gas.
Talking of fun and scrubbing, this is most probably what a scrub was back in the day.
Ah, there you go, man. I like it. I love it. Dude, that's when I think that photo was from Huvinka in Finland. And talk about rough sand. And it was really cool to be on those really legendary tracks. I remember watching a video of Håkan Andersson winning the world championship in '72 on that first monoshock ML at Huvinka, to ride the tracks that have been around for so long, to me is pretty incredible. I still can't get enough of the videos where Jeff Smith and some of the early Sten London, they're riding those old BSAs. I just get a kick out of that.
Talking about that pit,
on my website, I've got a story. I think it's still on there where I rode with the first 3 world champions of our sport: Sten London, Jeff Smith, and Bill Nichols. Did I say that right?
You did.
Yeah. And they were all there for a party, and it was awesome. It was just spectacular. And I followed Sten London around on a Monarch replica or an original and just followed his lines. And it was so cool, arcing the outside. So I wrote a story on that. Check it out and, make some comments on it, on your thoughts on that. But that was up in Colorado, one of the classic motocross events where they had the old 4-strokes before the vintage bikes.
So when you were on Husky, is that when things started to change for you? Like you got sponsored by JT, which obviously in the 70s and 80s were just absolutely massive. Is that when
I got my JT deal from John Gregory at Galdorf, Germany. That day I got second. He came over, he walked right past Hannah, because he already had Hannah in his deal. He goes, "Hey, what's the deal, man?" And John and Rita were awesome. And I ride to he's got a remote property out of Chalice, Idaho. And we ride dirt bikes into his property, and he's got some outbuildings, and it's all off the grid. He's got a creek that generates electricity, and he still flies, and it's good to see him up there. But yeah,
isn't that where Hannah lives?
Hannah lives up there, and he brokers planes and flies those backwoods planes. They're not backwoods, backcountry planes. And I'd probably get into that too when I get too old to really spend as much time on a dirt bike. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But it's a lot of fun to fly back in the backcountry and the wilderness area and drop it into a strip. But the Husqvarna, there's a lot of passion with the brand, because that's where I made the transition. Everybody that races, they don't know if they're going to make it or not. You're just giving it your best shot. So there's this, some following that built up in the people that I rode with that enjoyed that I was riding the Husqvarna, and I made that transition from a privateer rider to what you could say got a contract and a deal. And it was exciting times. And I won the 250 Trans Am as a privateer rider for Husky, but they were helping me with some parts. Crip would slide me a cylinder underneath the back of the truck, and it was good times. But I was actually a privateer 5, 6, and 7. So 78 was my first contract for the factory. But we were like I said, we didn't practice a lot. We raced a lot. And that's
what was the money? What was the contract money like back then?
20 grand, something like that. With Husky, and then a lot of deals came together really quick. And then I had some injuries, and these were some problem. In the book, I'm putting together a memoir to recall some of these things. I had 3 major injuries. All right. I was just coming into my own in the Trans Am in 78. I could win one of these things. Throttle stuck, cut my leg wide open. The first time I rode, I can remember pushing myself up off a frozen Lommel track and kind of assessing the damages. I had come down early from Sweden, and all those sand whoops were still there, churned up by knobs during warmer days, were now frozen. And the rear end stepped out, and I was just so hungry to go fast and show everybody what I could do. It was stupid. The bike wasn't even tested yet. I didn't even have my suspension set up, and I broke my wrist. And and I stayed in Europe, went back to Sweden, recovered, cracked the top 10, worked with a new motor with Eric Krippa that I didn't like the way the Husky big motor worked. And I became top America, got on the podium at the USGP. So all of a sudden, bam, I'm back in the action again. Eric was going to be my mechanic. And then I go up, and in Oregon, I tore the cartilage in my knee. Done. So 3 major injuries within 8 months. And my Swedish mechanic used to say, Pella Moss. He said, Torsten Holman used to say, it's not the first injury that ends a rider's career. It's the second one, the one that comes too fast, too quick, trying to recover. And I was sitting on 3. And my contract was with Europe, and it wasn't for the U.S. The U.S. didn't have any budget. So in the 11th hour, Niels Arne calls me and says, well, you know, Chuck, you'll have to kind of prove yourself all over again. So Krippa came out. We go to the Trans Am in mid-Ohio, and I won the opening moto. And I've been gone in Europe. Nobody even knew where I was. So that's kind of a hallmark of things that happened with me. It was like do or die. All my buddies are going to college. 3 injuries. My body's all racked up. And then I pull out a win ahead of the current world champion, Mel Herb. And all of a sudden, I was so stoked. I was the guy. So you had Husky that were using their Swedish socialistic techniques. You know, Chuck, you're like a employee to us. And these riders get paid so much money that, we want to continue to pay you as an employee, and you could have a job for many years to come. I said, that's nice. But I Honda with Roger DeCoster joining them was just too alluring. And then, as you know, Husky ceased to continue here in the U.S. after that. So it was hard to leave Husky. It helped me get where I was, where I actually made it. But Honda was really exciting. They wanted to mix up their whole program. I think maybe Steve Wise was the only holdover. It was all a brand new team, and brand new bike, the introduction of the Pro Link, and to have a real works bike was incredibly exciting, and it was a whole lot of fun. Anyway,
on the Husky, you had some good results, though, because I think it was 78. I don't know where, but we know him as the man. Other people know him as Roger DeCoster. You actually beat him on a day.
Yeah, it was in the mud at Mid-Ohio. And I'll flash back to 75. I'm a completely raw rookie, my very first year on the Trans Am. And I rode a 360 Husky, just brought it out in a pickup truck and a canopy to Mid-Ohio. And then I heard somebody say in this broken Belgium, we're going to do good today in the rain. And I looked around to see who he's talking to. And I was just absolutely starstruck when it was Roger was talking to me.
Wow.
And I eloquently said, yeah, it's about all I could say. I was really excited because we're mud riders. And so now here it is 3 years later, and I'm actually passing him. And it was, I can still remember, the track was really muddy. So there was only 1 or 2 lines that formed. So I went off the main line, dove through the mud to the inside, and, kind of trusted what was underneath there. and it was the quickest line to the next turn. And it was the day I bagged DeCoster, respectfully so.
Fantastic.
It was pretty cool. And he was still on Suzuki at the time. And the very next year, he was on Honda for his final win in the GP. And then 1980, he would join the U.S. team to co-manage the U.S. Honda team. So pretty awesome to have known Roger for so many years and in many different aspects of his career.
If Roger's watching this evening, or anybody, those Roger's watching, we'd love to get him on to have a chat with him. You know, he's obviously given his life to the sport, still in it now.
Would you be able to string a couple of? I think I'll be able to speak to him.
I know, I get like that all the time. I always get nervous with you.
But he puts everybody at ease. He's very comfortable. I'll run into him every 2 to 3 years, usually at Glen Helen, and you know he'll throw out a little insight to the racing days and how. We'd talk about the start money in Europe, and he said he never had an issue with start money, and you know he always has some note of experience from those days, which for me is enriching. And I had the opportunity to enjoy the start money in the season that I rode, and it's just kind of a cool experience. It's a thing of the past a little bit. I know they still do it in Europe, but it was pretty cool. It was more precise than the stock market. If you did good the Sunday before, your stock went up that next week for your next race.
Hey, Chuck, we had Brad on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the Hants Grand National at Matcham's. Of course, I expect you got fond memories of that place. That's just down the road. It's about 10 minutes from home for me.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it was a very rough, demanding track, and I was still kind of the new kid on the block, and still intimidated by all the good riders. But it was a great experience. I woke up this house at this bed and breakfast, wailing screams. I had these night terrors. And they thought somebody was breaking in. And it was hilarious. Pella, the owner of the house, what's happened, Chucken? You know, dude, I'd always laugh at people because I'd have these occasional night terrors that I can't even replicate the sounds in real life. So something's trying to get me behind this door, and I race fast, so this beast never gets me. But anyway, that's still a memory that I have. Oh, and then all the traffic.
What was the man Roger DeCoster like as a team manager, Chuck? You know, his team talk before you were racing in 81.
Well, he liked to be involved on the technical side, and you know, keeping an eye out, making sure the right parts were available from a fundamental standpoint, and that really paid off. The equipment and the riders were really good. I remember one time making a transition from a private tier rider to a factory rider. Now I didn't have anything to do. You know, when I got off my bike, I got to change the filter, I got to fuel up, I got to check the tire pressure. I had a checklist of things to do. I drink water, have a sandwich, and boom, you got called up to the starting line. It was no time to get nervous. Now, with a mechanic, I had too much time on my hands, and now you had time to get nervous. This is early on, and Roger says, read a book, man. So now I'll never forget that and I like to read a lot today also, but that's one of his advice. And you know, other times, you know, on when you charge at the end of a 40+2 lap moto, and he kind of agreed with my philosophy on that a little bit. And I would, in 40 minutes, if you were hooking up with somebody, you didn't need to bag them right away. A 30-minute moto, you better get it done and get it on. So I'd shag back a little bit, make them think that that's perhaps all I had, and let them tire out a little bit, and then bag them. It's like my version of rope-a-dope. But
on that note, Chuck, about bagging them, let's just watch you in action. You can tell us about how you set up your suspension for this track afterwards. You'll know where it is anyway.
okay.
Congratulations. Second American ever to win the USGP.
Feels good.
It was a brilliant ride.
Just gave it everything I got. I tried really hard and I was starting to get sick to my stomach. I'm feeling it right now. I'm really tired, but it was worth the effort.
Man, you guys really come up with some nuggets. That's awesome. I have to jog my memory. Garrett Wolsink, right here in Vegas, at the Meacham auction, I believe it was, sold his Works Suzuki for like 70 grand. And we had a good chat because he's the winningest rider at Carlsbad, I think 5 or 6 times. And he said he'd be 7 if I didn't win it that year. But I had a question for him. I said, what suspension did you use? And he said, always my sand settings. And it confirmed something for me. We always did a lot of testing with Eric. So the first moto, I was 4th or 5th, and I knew it was a problem. Carlsbad was hard-packed blue groove, but the bumps there were formed over the last 30 years, and you could never grind them down. So they just filled them in. And then after practice, the soft dirt was out of the middle of the bump. So they were like sand whoops, except hard packed. And a lot of the riders, including myself, would set the bike up looser compliance. So the tire would move easily over the bumps. Well, that didn't work in the rough, gnarly G-forces of Carlsbad. So I did really kind of unthinkable. I changed to my sand settings, forks, and shock for the second moto. And I can still remember it so precisely. As soon as I hit the second or third turn, I could feel it. And I go, oh, this is awesome. I could feel comfortable with the bike. And it was such a good time. Mal Herb was kind of a buddy of mine in Europe. He was a cool guy to hang out with. And it was fun to bag him. And poor Brad, he never really won Carlsbad. If he would have caught up to me and passed me, he would have won. But so it was really cool to win the second moto and the overall. And I'm an Oregon guy, and the loamy dirt and sort of win on the hard packed surface was kind of a rite of passage for me in Southern California. So suspension made a huge role. Secondly, Honda the night before said you got to run the 500 motor. That's what Mal Herb has in Europe. You got to run the 500 motor. I hated it. It was like this, and it was stupid to run that motor in that hard packed blue groove. So Eric, the night before, shoehorned in my national motor, which is a 472, and that power was so sweet, and that helped me win it. And so the engineers were excited about their win, and Eric says, I'm going to get fired. I said, nah. Showed them the motor, and the shock on their face was unbelievable. They thought for sure I won because of the 500 motor. And they gutted that motor, and that helped develop the power delivery for Honda because they reshaped the motor. So it was 480s for a couple years before it eventually became a 500. So the story of Carlsbad were a couple things. It was suspension and power delivery. And the third thing is I barely made it to time practice. If you don't make it in time, they close the gate. You're done.
Yeah, you're right.
You've seen that. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Well, I stayed at Marty Motz's house, and it seemed kind of quiet in the morning. And I get up, and and my alarm clock is off, and I go, oh shit! And I drive out to the track. The traffic's already coming in. I go, I'm not going to make it. So I pull off the side of the road. I had a van with my practice bike in there. Get out of here. Unload the practice bike, which was a 480, put my jersey on so people would know who I was as security, and put my riding bag in my lap and rode past all the cars into the track. Dave Arnold, Eric, they're freaking out. You got to get up into the starting. You got 10 minutes, and barely got in time to lay down a practice. So real exciting times, the Carlsbad GP.
What was the atmosphere like there, Chuck? I've watched those races 1,000 times on video, and they just looked unbelievable. The amount of people there.
Well, it's Southern California, everybody liked the party atmosphere. Carlsbad was in July. It was really hot. A lot of times the Euros weren't used to that hot temperature. It was like an adobe stove. And people with their coolers and long hair, and you could smell weed blowing over across the track. And
you played it perfectly.
And bikinis and tans.
Can I just say, before you go any further, we don't recommend weed on this show. That was them. This is a different era if there's children watching. Thank you.
If they're children. Well, I mean, it's where I'm at right now, it's legal. I mean, you can actually sit there and smoke it in front of a cop if you're in the privacy of your own home. But they'll find some other reason to do it. And it can be relaxing. Hey, Mike Tyson just smoked it before his fight. But at any rate, it's something that I grew up with. It was around when I was 15. And here's a little story. I remember having a dream. I mean, this has stuck with me over so many years. I was probably 15 at the time, 15 or 16. And I remember waking up from a dream, and I was in the dream, I was all smoked out. And I woke up, and I was so happy that I wasn't stoned. And that was a kind of a pivotal message. And so from then on, it was like moderation. You can be too stoned. It's counterproductive. It doesn't work. But just a little modification here or there, to chill, it's okay. But I'll never forget that. I was so happy not to be all fuzzed out. Anyway, that's my public announcement for you.
when you were obviously every sport now has got totally clinical, the stars don't walk around the track, or they don't want to mix with the public. When you started out, like you were quite a quiet guy by all accounts, but you went to some good like motocross parties with all the top people. Which was your best one?
You broke up just a little bit there. A motocross party?
Yeah, your best motocross parties you went to.
I tell you, there was a party. It was a tramp, and I'm the new kid, so I'm like watching all these guys, and I'll never forget. Graham Noyce was there, and he was like so well received in the U.S. Kind of the brash, and it was like maybe the year before he was world champion, maybe 77 even. And there was everybody there, Pomeroy, Weiner, Lackey, and it was just an awesome social event. But somebody had made some weed brownies. And Marty Tripes, he never smoked weed or anything like that. And he sometimes he liked to eat a little bit, and he mistakenly chowed some of those brownies. And I'll never forget. I said, I feel like a robot. I'm a zombie. I'm not in control, you know. And he had no idea what happened to him, but that was his first experience of having an edible. But
just one thing I wanted to, just before we run out of time.
yeah.
You won at Le Mans 81, but tell us the story about how you nearly got Team USA excluded from the Le Mans nations in only about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember watching it on the TV and thinking, I know that guy.
I'm not going to talk about that. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to go there. Yeah. I mean, it's Giuseppe Longo says, I forgive your passion for the sport. And, I've got some thoughts about that too. But, I really wanted to talk before I go there. I quarantined all summer up in the panhandle of Idaho, almost to the Canadian border, at a place called Gold Creek Lodge. And it's one of the only places in the world that they just speak moto, period. There's a restaurant, there's a pub, there's a shop. They rent KTMs. They got RVs, parking, and big fire pit and a hotel. And I just ended up staying there all summer, riding, cutting trails, and just have a great time. In the winter, all these creek crossing, I kept my feet dry because I'm having the former boots. But after all those years and my knees are jacked up, the only way I could survive is the Mobius knee braces. So anyway, it's amazing. I never wore knee braces in the past, but the Mobius are lean and small, and I could dab without having my ankle flip and switch. And so a lot of good people backing me up all year. But yeah, so I'm over there in Lomo. And
was it 2012?
2012. And we always, motocrossers, we learn to sneak into areas we're not supposed to be. So I'm no exception. They've seen me do interviews, and I just give the guy at the gate a nod, hey, so he just assumed I should be in there. So I snuck into the pit area where the cameramen are, and there's no crowds, nothing. I kind of stand behind the scissors. I go, sweet, this is awesome. And here comes Barsha on the 500. Now, keep in mind, this is qualifying. And he throws the bike in, but the sand, you can't throw the bike into a turn in Lomo because it fluffs out. And he lost the front end. It goes right into the fence, right in front of me.
It was through the chestnut fence, wasn't it? So the front wheel went through and it sort of got trapped.
But it's like a Chinese finger trick. The more he'd pull, the tighter it was. And I'm sitting right there, and the camera's on me, and I said, dude, they're going to think I'm just like a real pile not to help him. And I started pondering this thing, and everybody went by. It was only 2 laps to go. Game over. So once game over, they're not going to care, So I influenced the fence. I never touched his bike. and I influenced the fence because it was in a dangerous position. And as a result of influencing the fence, he was able to get unstuck, much to the delight of the crowd. So people pay good money to watch top riders race, not lay in the ground in the fence. So I'm just thinking about spectators, but I end up being the GOAT. And GOAT, that's not being the greatest of all time. I'm just a GOAT. And they ended up disqualifying from him. And here's the thing. That rule is outdated. The rule was for the big money. Well, it was for big money teams that could stage riders all around the track back when bikes weren't reliable. Makos, Tacos, and they'd have an unfair advantage. So they created this rule. Well, we don't have those kind of problems anymore. And to deprive spectators of an opportunity to see a top rider in the world not race. So now he got disqualified, but it was the last race of the day. The U.S. still easily qualified. And the 2 laps that Barsha got, he got to look at the track at the roughest point it was. So what I gave him was a chance to learn, and he took that, and it gave him a performance that put him the top performing American on the team. He was 3rd in a moto. So I'll pat myself on the back a little bit.
You also got a severe telling off from the FIM, didn't you?
Not really. They were laughing about it, you know. And I was still trying to talk him out of it, dude. It was unsafe. I never touched his bike. And they said, I know you're a mora for the sport, they were saying. And so, but no, Chuck son. I mean, now, earlier in the day, there was some Italian rider, and I saw a flagman pick his bike up and push it. That didn't get noticed. So, you know, it was just too damn visible. I'm up on the Jumbotron. I'm horrified. There's no way I'm going to talk my way out of this one, although I did try. So thanks for bringing that up, pal.
I'm going to bring some comments up on the screen, Chuck, what people have been putting up, because obviously you can't see them, but anyway, we can't see them because it's streaming, and it's not on Facebook, so people keep putting comments up. But here's one. Ask Chuck about shearing sheep at our farm, Graham Lightfoot.
Well, it's a skill that I now possess, and that's so awesome. And I go up there and I said, how do you do all this stuff? You know, and I got invited up to do in Northern England a night race, and I show up and said, where's the lights? No, man, we don't need any lights here. It doesn't get dark till midnight. I had no idea. So then in the morning, we've got a good English breakfast for you, but before breakfast, you got to help us shear the sheep. And they had this whole system where they hook them up, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty awesome. So I got a gig. I know that I can go over to the Lightfoots, and I barely made it back one day because I did this hike all the way up. They could probably give you the name of it. They said, yeah, Chuck, you go up to the tarn and turn. And I went all the way up. And part of the hike, you climb up these rocks. So it was a good time, man. Good to hear from those guys.
I've got another guy that's posted. You most probably remember this guy.
Oh, yeah. Mako Oli. That's awesome. I mean, it's so cool to show up. I mean, the thing about vintage bikes is sometimes you get offered something that is not quite up to the par. But Mako's only it was like a works bike, so it was quite a treat. Thanks, bro.
What about those Denton Hondas that you rode, Chuck, at the VMXDN?
Oh yeah, that was a treat. You know, what's cool about them, they have a little bit newer motor in them, but with the twin shocks, and they were at gas. I always had such a good time at Farley. One of the best times is riding with the guys that you knew in the day, but you didn't really know them. And one of them was Werner.
Werner.
The Mako rider originally.
You mean Herbie Smits?
Herbs, yeah.
The late great Herbie Smits. A lovely man.
I miss that guy so much.
We all do.
And we hooked up on the track, and I was like, oh my God, he's going to beat me. I got to really get on the stick. But to follow his GP style, how he kept the speed up in the turn, a real strong, smooth rider, was really cool to see. Nearly won the world championship by just a few points one year. And to be able to see the riding styles from arguably heroes that I first know about was a big part of the magic of Farley. So good times.
The one thing the one story, if anybody asks me about you, that always springs to mind, and I'm not sure I don't think it was the first year you came to the VMXDM, but the second, is I'm there on the, I think it was on the Thursday dinner time, we're setting up, and I see this guy with this bright red hat walking with just a tiny little suitcase up the drive, and it's you, and it's like, Chuck, what are you doing here? He goes, hey man, yeah, I made it. He goes, hey, have you got $100 you can lend me? and then
I went home with the same $100, man. I mean, I never had to pay for a drink in the bar.
No,
that's
you
the
said,
best part.
I said to you, where are you staying? You said, I don't know, can you find me somewhere? So I rang my mate and he brought his camper down for you for the weekend.
Oh, one time, one of your guys that does the rental equipment, he had a Yamaha Sprinter. I had just come down from the bar, and I just kind of poked around. Oh, this is open, and I crashed in his rig. He didn't even know who was in it. And then the next day, he goes, "Oh, Chuck,
Sean Copeman from SC Sport Homes."
Yeah, Sean Copeman, FC. I crashed in his place a couple times.
I remember.
Stone.
Oh, Chris Stone.
Chris Stone, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good time. But yeah. I remember one year it was just pissing outside, and we were up at the Hungerford Lounge, Graham, and we're all sitting there, and he says, Graham, you're a good mud rider. What's the key? I got to stay loose, man. So if we drank too much and we're hungover tomorrow, that would cause you to be a loose, wouldn't it? I said, yeah. All right, let's keep ordering rounds and rounds of cider. So yes. One after another, we just rounds of cider. And the next day in the mud, there was Graham, back end kicked out, just throwing up mud through the off camber, just riding brilliantly. So we had a great time. Sitting around that campfire, talking to an old boy that used to bring his CZ in the back of his Mercedes to the early GPs. I mean, it's priceless stuff.
Absolutely.
There was some good nights at the pub, actually. That's where I think I first met you, at the pub at Farley Castle. This was one of the nights. You'd done a bit of an interview with Jeff Smith, and we had a collection and raised nearly 300.
You did. You sung up there that year, didn't you, Al?
Yeah, I'd done a bit of singing, and we raised nearly £400 for spinal research. And we called up Jeff Smith on the phone, and obviously you knew him quite well, so you're better at interviewing than me, and just took over and got some great stories out of him.
Well, it doesn't take much to get a good story out of Jeff Smith, man. And I bought his biography. He's got a beautiful book, and it's rare for me to kick down 50 bones for a book, but from him it was worth it. And it has his whole history, the ISDE, and it's his half helmets. It's spectacular. And I remember that night in the bar, the French sang their national anthem there too. So it was just good times.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple birds were floating in, So yeah.
Well, Chuck, it's been an amazing night interview. I'm just going to bring some other things up on the screen from. I put up Franco Ripper.
Yeah, Transburgaro. I sure missed that. They had to cancel it the last couple of years. And the best thing about donations and Transburgaro events, where they bring the guys together that used to race in the day, gives you a chance to get to know them better in the real world. Brad and his wife and Brock and I are actually kind of buddies now, instead of the nemesis, and Brock and his wife, and got to hang out with Eric Gabors, and to be able to hang out with him and get to know him better before he passed was just a treat. And Transburgaro gave me that opportunity to do that, as well as Farley doing that ride with Joe Bay and hanging with him in his last few years. And we're not all going to be in this thing forever.
No.
I might live forever, but it's not because of my lifestyle.
Chuck, when can we expect to see this book?
I've been talking about it for years. I might just turn it into a blog I get so many opportunities to ride and have a good time that I mean, I've put together an outline and it's good times. But I want to write it to where it's like an exciting adventure. So I'm still tinkering around on it. I'll put some pieces together and I'll get some feedback from everybody.
Good. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that, Chuck. Chris Stone's just.
Chris Stone. I think I crashed at his place one time. He took me around and rented some of the equipment. So thanks, Chris. Had a good time.
Cool. Yeah, that's it. There's been just absolute legend. Beers are on me next year.
I'll make a note of that. I'll take a screenshot, Scott.
Well, so what have you got coming up in the next couple of weeks, Chuck? Just paint a picture for us. What are you up to?
Well, I'm here in Las Vegas. The weather's awesome, and I'm catching up on modifying the Sprinter. Did you see the picture I sent of the Sprinter?
Yeah, we're I will find that. Hang on, give me a minute.
Oh, this artist dude, Jeremy designed up at Coeur d'Alene, just rattle canned it. Super talented. Yeah, look at that flying monkey. And we just put on things that's an old Husky tank that I like to do. I mean, and going up to the tower, crossing creeks, and it just shows a lifestyle. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm modifying the inside to make it a little better when I go on the road. So I'm catching up on some fun little projects. And this afternoon, I'll go on a mountain bike ride. And I got a crew in 2 weeks coming down from Gold Creek, and guys going down to Mexico. I may end up doing a little stint in Mexico. There's my Russian hat. A guy snuck into the tent with bottle cap glasses, bit a coin. I said, you got to be kidding me. This is out of a movie. And wanted to do a trade for some jeans because that's, nothing was around back in those days in Russia. I traded him a jersey, traded him a Husky jersey with that rabbit hat.
Fantastic. We need to have you back. You need to do another European summer, Chuck.
Oh, absolutely. I got to catch up with Dennis Slythe and stay up at his house, at the Forge House, at the castle. We had always a good time there. It's amazing. He's got that track. I can barely ride on its track. It's so rough. But Eastwood comes out there and just carves it up. It's a rutted track back there. Dennis, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sammy, absolutely. Dennis Slythe. He's got some great stories. So a lot of good friends over there. Kinsey, slamming some paint in the studio about, the classic days of motocross, and, a lot of good folks over there. And I'd look forward to coming to hanging out again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Chuck, we've been on for nearly an hour and a half. Usually we sort of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, it's
man.
brilliant.
Time flies, bro.
Time flies, but obviously, you're almost probably busy. What time is it where you are? I suppose it's lunchtime.
It's about lunchtime, and I'll go spin it out. I mean, we have some really fun technical trails. I just burn one and go ride my mountain bike.
Yeah, no, all is what it was. Before we go, I was just going to do a big shout out to John Dowd, obviously, who had a big off a few weeks ago. I don't know whether you know, Chuck, but
yeah, I heard that. I hope he does well. Yeah.
So I'm just going to.
I think hip is injured a little bit. I understand, but
yeah. So just sort of give a shout out to John Dowd, and hope you get well soon. If anybody's watching, so.
And support for his wife that's taking care of him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You take care of yourself, Chuck.
Yeah, man. Good seeing you guys. Well, we'll do it again soon. Cheers.
There you go. Chuck's son, Dave King from Vets MXDM. Thanks for coming on, guys. Really enjoyed that tonight. I hope everybody at home enjoyed it. And I'm trying to get some other people in the pipeline. There's emails going back and forth with some sort of big names. So
we'll get Roger on there.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay,
cheers.
Everybody. Yep, later.
All the best.
Bye.
there you go. Another great interview with Chuck, the rising sun. Oh, he's such a great guy, great character, good rider as well. So thanks for watching, everybody. I don't know when the next interview is, but there are some in the pipeline with a bit of luck. So just keep tuned on Vets MXDN, and see you soon, hopefully. Thank you very much. Bye.